Adi and I have been together 15 years. It's a choice. We have to continuously choose each other. We will get bored. You will get lazy. You will take it for granted, which is why we're back at therapy right now, because we've got a little lazy. We're taking care of all these other couples, all of our people, our tribe. We're not looking inward and taking care of ourselves. We've been neglecting it. So like a dirty corner of like piles of stuff, it's just collected and now it's time to do the work again. And what keeps the passion alive? What helps us keep the spark alive is something like this, is all the things that we've described. Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we're here to finish off Sexuality and Intimacy Month.
Yes, today is a going deep episode, which means Adi and I interview each other, connect, talk, pick a topic, and go deep.
Yeah. And true to form, we're going to go deep.
This is a doozy. This is a good end of the 2019 final episode of the year. This is what it's all about, y'all.
Yeah. I got to admit, I'm like a little nervous about this one.
Yeah, I think
guess that's how we know.
I think the ones that were always our favorite episodes thus far have been the ones we were nervous about going into it. And I think that means something, and it's important to feel something, to change and to share from our hearts.
Hallelujah and amen. And so we're going to start out with our review of the week. Drum roll, please. Gina, your review of Three Hearts. I love it. That's just literally the name of it, is Three Hearts. This is one of my favorite podcasts. They are such an amazing couple and inspire me in my own relationship. Sophie is authentic and encourages gratitude and connection to our environment and universe. The topics covered are outstanding, and I love the newer format where one topic is addressed throughout the month.
Yay.
Well, as you like this format, that's why I picked you for our Going Deep, because, you know, this was a new thing for us, and we like it as well. It definitely allows us to focus.
Yeah, I think for us, we love so many different topics. If you look at what Adi and I do, even in a given day, from motherhood, fatherhood, parenthood, relationships, alone time, family time, work, ignited, philosophy. Like there's just so many things that we love to do and to help people. And in order to keep our, not even scattered brains, but just like lots of passions organized, this new format has really helped us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think today's episode, which is why I felt so right to read that review today, is a good example of that, is because we've had a lot of conversations that even informed our thinking about sexuality and intimacy over the month. And so we can have an even better conversation than we would have.
Absolutely. We're learning and growing ourselves. And I took so much from the last 3 episodes that we had. I mean, blown away by the guests over and over and over again. Definitely go back and listen. If you haven't yet, go back and listen to our first 3 episodes this month on sexuality. We hit it from different angles, you know, very specifically on intimacy, and then sexuality, and then sexual trauma, sex addiction. We kind of hit it all in the last 3 weeks. So please go back and listen. Please go back and share with friends if something sparks your interest and maybe would be interesting to your friend or family member, and share on social media when you can, because we're trying to get to 1 million downloads before New Year's Eve this year. So we want, by the time we wake up on 2020 in the new year, we want to have 1 million downloads, and we're not far. We're at 900 something thousand.
Yeah, I think we're like 60,000 away.
Amazing. So with your help with sharing, you can either do it on social media if that feels good to you, Facebook, Instagram.
Call all your friends and family individually.
Let's be realistic.
Let them know
Please.
That you're going to be sending them a podcast link.
Email your friends, whatever works for you, whatever modality works. But please spread the word for us. If you love our podcast, you're listening for free. just remember that this is our time, our energy, and we would love for you to give it a share, however that feels good to you.
Totally. And if that means walking into an Apple store and just moving all of the phones onto our IGNTD Podcast,
and
that's
subscribing.
Also a way to do it.
That works.
Really, really whatever you can do to help us. So if you have a quote for us.
Yes. One of my favorite quotes, which if you followed me throughout the years, you know I use it a lot, and it applies to a lot of different things in our lives. This one specifically, since we are talking about a D&I's relationship and sexuality and intimacy, I thought it was very appropriate. So it's Kurt Vonnegut, one of Adie's favorite authors.
Yeah.
I want to stand as close to the edge as I can without going over. Out on the edge, you see all kinds of things you can't see from the center. I love that for the topic today. Yeah, you can stay in the center and stay safe and have vanilla sex for the rest of your life. You cannot challenge your growth edges.
Vanilla is a great flavor.
Yeah, I love vanilla. I don't know if I want vanilla every day, though, for the rest of my life till I die.
Sometimes you want strawberry.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I want mint chips. Sometimes I want several scoops. Sometimes I want several scoops of different flavors. And sometimes I want toppings.
I like how you're seeding the conversation for later. Sometimes I want several scoops.
Sometimes I want toppings.
Yeah.
You know?
Our therapist, we saw a new therapist yesterday, and it's the first time in years. You guys know that our initial couples therapist, well, not initial, but our latest couples therapist before this woman passed, and we haven't really found another one yet. It was a daunting task to find somebody new, but we needed somebody, and so we found a new therapist. And it was funny, there was this phrase that you said yesterday, Soph, and she responded in a really interesting way. And you said, I guess that's part of our thing is we're always finding new challenges. I said, well, you don't really make it easy on yourself to not find challenges.
And I laughed and I was like, valid point, and we're not going to stop.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we can keep it safe and keep it, in my mind, pretty boring. And some people like it there.
Well, it's not even the boring. From my standpoint, the reason, and we're going to get into much more specifics here today, guys, but the reason we push the edge is, talked about vanilla as the flavor, but you've heard this phrase a million times. You've heard this concept. It's not just that you get bored with a relationship, in our opinion, if it doesn't move forward. By the way, it doesn't have to move forward in our way, but if it doesn't move forward in some ways, it's just that you have decades with the same person, like 40, 50, 60, 70 years with the same person. And I believe that part of the reason a lot of couples end up divorcing and not making it is because nobody puts an effort on growing the relationship, on shifting. And so you can call it boredom, you can call it whatever, but the boredom lasts a certain amount of time, and then somebody looks for interest somewhere else. So whether it becomes cheating or developing another life that is not part of the relationship, you end up looking for interest somewhere.
And I think that that's applicable to all things, not just sexuality. In a relationship, if you're going to be together for a lifetime, you need to grow together. If I'm growing, if I go back to school and I start growing in this way and you just keep doing the same thing, and you need to constantly be growing at the same pace. And that can be hard because you're two individuals. So if
you think it has to happen at the same pace?
I think you have to try. I think you have to try. So, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Nothing is perfect, but I think it's really important to keep challenging yourself to be better in all areas and to challenge your growth edges.
Yeah.
When I'm, teaching yoga, when I'm taking yoga and I'm in a hard pose, there's a level, and this is kind of like metaphorical, but like say that you're in a really hard pose, there's a softening and then there's an expanding. And then there's the utmost expansive point of that pose that you can open up into. That's like the biggest, right? The biggest version of that pose. And that is something that can continuously get better and better and better. That best version of the pose will change and shift over years, right? In 5 years, if I keep practicing, the way that it feels in my body and the way it looks will continue. My flexibility will increase. My strength will increase. My relationship to the pose, the force that I put myself through. Point being, in all areas, we will continue to morph and evolve and change. And hopefully your partner is doing the same and doing the work from his or her end.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely...
And challenging those growth edges. That was my point, is just like challenging growth edges came to me when I was 19 and started taking yoga. And I realized like, I can stay safe or I can potentially fall. I can go into this pose and I can lift my hand off the earth and I can think, I may fall, but that's a risk I'm willing to take to potentially grow. And that's how I feel like my life is from that metaphor. Like that's what I like. That's the example of what I want to be in my life, for you, for myself, for my children. I want to constantly take risks within reason. Like if you fall, you're going to fall onto your yoga mat, onto the floor, tops a foot. You're fine. Like,
right. That's not necessarily true in relationships.
Sure.
Though.
So I'm saying within reason, right? There's risks. I think it's about weighing the risks in order to grow. And sometimes there are certain things that like we just shouldn't do. Like I shouldn't jump out of a plane. You convinced me not to jump out of a plane on my birthday a few years ago because we have children and there's a large risk. I fought it a little bit and then I thought, not worth the fight, not worth the risk, right? Like there are lots of risks we can take. That doesn't mean it's going to better your relationship. And I think what we're talking about today is within reason, what risks can you take to open up your hearts to new experiences that do feel a little scary. And that doesn't have to just be sexually.
So I think let's kind of give it a little structure by starting a little bit in the beginning. And you were young, you were 20 when we met. I was 28. I'd had a lot of life experience that you hadn't. Some of it, especially around intimacy and sexuality, scared you.
Yeah.
Right? Like I remember you asked me for my number or whatever early on in our relationship.
How many people you had slept with?
Yeah. And
You lied.
I lied. I told you 7.
You told me 3. The first time you told me 3.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess 3 would be the most serious girlfriends.
Yeah.
Like the real long-term relationships. I've been in like 7 relationships in my life before you. So 8 total, I guess.
3 were more serious.
3 of them were serious, right? Like the girlfriends that lasted a year or more, or something like that, like real relationships. And then I came to you the next day and I gave you the real number. And
it wasn't 3.
it was not 3.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it was like 30 something, I think. Was it at the time?
I don't remember.
It was something like that.
Yeah.
But my point is, it shocked the hell out of you. It freaked you out. We had to have a lot. This is like a couple of months maybe into our relationship, maybe a few weeks, because you're not one to hold back.
Right. No, it was in the beginning.
It was really early on. And so it freaked you out right from the beginning. We had to have a lot of conversations about that. Why did I not tell you the truth in the first place? All that kind of stuff. And you had been with one person. And I didn't know as much of this in the beginning, but not necessarily a very comfortable, secure, trusting healthy relationship there, not just in terms of sexuality, but in general intimacy and physical touch. Like, I remember this freaked me out when we first started getting together. But like sometimes I would lift my hand and you would flinch, which was very bizarre. You know me, you've now known me for 15 years.
Yeah.
I'm not like...
Yeah. A violent person.
For me to hit somebody literally requires like risk to me. Like I would have to be defending myself.
Right.
And so it was really bizarre. We talked about that as well. So there was a lot of trauma for you in your past.
100%.
And so you would cry sometimes during sex when I would go down on you. Like anything really sexually intimate. Would freak you out. So that's where we started. The reason I wanted to say that is you guys listen to us now and we're having the conversation we're about to have here over the next hour. That's not how we started.
Right. Let's start at the beginning so that you understand the journey and the work it took to get here, because that's the key.
Yeah. And what I knew but didn't reveal, and what you didn't even know at the beginning, was that this entire time I was doing online messaging and chatting with women and like sharing pictures and stuff like that everywhere. And that I was watching porn like probably daily. Like honestly, it was probably every single day kind of a thing. If not, then it was really close to it. So that was in the background. You didn't know it because it didn't cause... Like you cried because of your trauma. This didn't cause me like a reaction that you would be able to see. So you just didn't know it. You told me later that you would see the little like messenger or whatever screen in the corner and that caused you some...
Well, I'm like, who are you talking
reaction.
to? Like I just didn't understand. I was like, who?
But that was all you told me, and you told me that much, much, much later. So that's where we started. And
so we've already got lies. We've already got PTSD, trauma, intimacy issues.
And communication problems. We don't know how to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Like you would cry and I would try to hold you. But that's all I knew how to do.
Yeah.
We didn't really ever talk about this stuff.
Right. And instead of coming to me to talk about things that may have been bothering you, you were like turning to porn and turning to all these other random women.
Yeah. Whenever we would have
as a coping mechanism.
Yep. That was the way I kind of knew to get better.
Yeah.
So that's where we started. And then I'd love to hear a little bit about your perspective. I mean, obviously we've talked about the cheating, so we don't have to focus all our efforts on that now, but like that's where you came from. And I think a lot of what we're talking about today is about the trauma that you experienced and some of the things so what did it feel like for you then and maybe a little bit closer to now?
Yeah. So definitely 15 to 20, I was with a very abusive boyfriend who was violent and scary and controlling. So I wasn't allowed to wear like a V-neck t-shirt. I would come home and my like t-shirts would be ripped up in shreds on my bed as just like you're not getting away with that. And I'm like, it's a t-shirt.
I do that too, but I'm trying to crop them more so that they're shorter.
Yeah. You're like nip slip. And he was just so jealous. And so he came from an abusive family. His dad has recently killed himself. Like that's how much hurt was in this family. He was just deeply troubled. The dad would like kick the dog down the stairs. He would, just like really violent and scary. They were not born again, but like Christian in the program, but like secretly would drink and just scary. And my ex would make up stories because he didn't trust himself or his family or his foundations. He would make up stories about like, you want him, you're sleeping with him.
Oh, with friends.
Like he would make up these stories in his head and then lash out on me and nothing. I never did anything wrong. And then I'm a very affectionate person, but that never changed. It was just who I was. And it did start to kind of like wear me down. And so I would start to just like not be as affectionate. And then, like we were sexual, but sometimes he would use it. Like he's raped me several times. Like we'd be out drinking with friends and then he'd be driving my car and then he would just like, we lived in the boondocks and he would this was in high school. He would take the wheel of the car and just like pull over on the side of the road. Like if I talked to someone at the party or gave someone like a look or someone looked at me or hit on me, he would act crazy and he would drink way too much. I don't think I even understood how much he was drinking. And I don't think I understood all the drugs he was doing until like we broke up. And he would pull the car over, like almost wreck my car and then chase me. I'd run out of the car because I was scared shitless and I would like run and he would chase me and then rape me. Damn. And then
I think every time you tell that story, I hear it.
And there were so many episodes like that. That's just one that just like sticks out. And I remember like seeing bright lights from like a gas station and running there because I'm like, he can't hurt me if there's people around. And no one really even knew. I would kind of, people would see our best friends, the inner circle would see that he would act crazy. But it wasn't, I didn't really talk about it because I was so ashamed and scared. And so that was like a solid 4 years on and off of fighting. I found out that he cheated on me because I developed chlamydia. So my OBGYN called me after a routine pap smear and was just like, by the way, you have this thing. You just take an antibiotic and then it's gone or whatever it was you take. And I was like, oh, so you can get that from just like public bathrooms or what? And she's like, no, only from sex. I'm like, oh, I've only had sex with one person. And like very confident, like, oh no, there's a mistake. There must be a mistake then. And she's like, no, it's only with someone that you've slept with. And then I was like, oh, like he slept with someone else that had it. And we were monogamous supposedly for 2 or 3 years when I found that information out. Yeah. So that was super traumatizing. And that's how I found out he cheated on me with someone from another college close by. Just like betrayal, violence, scary, unhealthy behaviors, trapped, the feeling of being trapped. And then I had an abortion with him when I was 17 because he would have been a nightmare to have a child with. And I mean, talk about like actual nightmare. And I was very confident in my choice to have an abortion. Like part of his dysfunction was definitely like trying to convince me and like we'll be fine. Like, we'll just, I'm like, okay. And then went and got an abortion because I knew, I was like, this is a disaster. This is a nightmare waiting to happen. I will be trapped in this fucking town for the rest of my life with him and like all his babies. So when I turned 18, when I turned 17, I started plotting moving to LA. My dad lived here with my stepmom, moved here when I was 18.
Because this now starts, some of these elements start relating to what we're going to end up talking about later. So, and this relates to some of the stuff we're having now. So I think that's a really interesting kind of conversation to have. So you were saying never did anything wrong with anybody else, but like you're an attractive girl.
Yeah.
People will give you looks. I'm sure other people were interested. We've talked about this at length before. Were you ever interested? Like, did you ever find anybody else who was attractive? Did you ever see anybody? Like, what was sexuality like in your head?
I wasn't allowed, because I was 15 when we started dating. I didn't know what that meant to be attracted to someone else in that way because I never had any other experiences. I never got to see that through. When I was like 12, 13, I had my first kisses, and like that was around the time when you'd like play Spin the Bottle or 7 Minutes in Heaven and like all those games. And so I was curious, definitely attracted to boys, like for sure at that time. And, you know, like thought boys were cute and would kiss and then have butterflies and like loved that. And then I met my ex at 15. We slept together at 16 and like it all went downhill from there. But over time being in a relationship with him, he would see someone look at me or me look at someone and like decide that it was sexual, and then he would shut it down. So over and over again, I think I just learned to shut that down. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, because you and I have talked about this before, and we're going to get later to getting out of that trauma. But to me, that's a really important element. And again, I don't even know, because we all have our own experience, right? So I don't know if I hypersexualize or not, but I think
it's all relative too.
Yeah, it's all relative always. But I think when we first talked, I was like, wait, you're not attracted to anybody? Like just, and you're like, well, no, when I'm with somebody, I'm not. And I go, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Like you just stop seeing other people. And by the way,
that's what he wanted though.
Yeah.
He wanted, if you're my girlfriend,
you're not supposed to see anybody else.
You shouldn't see anyone else.
Even though he did.
I'm sure.
But he just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, I don't know what's normal. To be honest, I'm even saying it on here, right? Like I've seen hundreds, if not a few thousands of people in therapeutic settings. I don't even understand what's normal anymore. Like I don't know that there is a normal, but I'm just saying for me, it's pretty obvious that you can see people attractive, but also my learning about sex was completely different than yours, right?
Yeah,
like,
another extreme.
Yeah.
Opposite extreme.
Yeah. Well, we learned now my story is not even like super extreme, but between the two of us, I'm on one end, you're on the other for sure. Yeah. And so, porn, like, you know, naked women meant sex because of porn, like all that sort of a internal learning of kind of like, what does the body mean and what am I supposed to do sexually? And I learned everything I had to learn about sex from porn.
Right.
But I remember that was a point for the two of us in the beginning that we talk about a lot, which is really interesting because we're still having a little bit of this conversation about what is attractive, what does it mean to be attracted to somebody else, all those little pieces. For me, there was no trauma other than the shame. Like I knew, like the porn was hidden.
Right.
The volume would be down and make sure nobody would know. Like it was, I knew it was a shameful thing. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It's really interesting to kind of think about even as I'm talking about it. Like, but it would give me a reward. For you, it was shut down.
Yeah.
Like, because of this experience with this guy, I'm not hearing that it happened before him.
Right.
But during that relationship and after, when we started dating, you wouldn't see, like, how did you even know you were with him when we met?
Yeah.
How could you even tell that you don't just like me as a friend, that you were attracted to me?
So for he and I came to LA to escape him, and then I chickened out, and we started talking again. I was lonely because I didn't have any friends yet, and just was like, I just chickened out. And so he came to live with me, and that was a huge mistake. And then I got into UCLA and we met. But the summer before that, he had gotten mad his final time with me. We went out. My friend Lydia was in town, and we went out. We went to a bar, and one of my college best friend, Seema, her group of friends, we were all like in a band, and one of like the dorky guys, like literally glasses, dorky, sweet as can be, but like not attracted to him. And my ex got really charged. I think he was on meth or on drugs at the time. I didn't know that. But after the fact, some friends revealed that he had been using. So it like amped him up and made him even angrier, and was drinking. And we had my dad's car, and he took my dad's car and ran away. Like called me a slut and ran away. He called me a slut all the time. Like called me names all the time.
Like the least slutty
person. The least slutty
know.
person. I got number one prude of my high school on like when websites just started. I was number one prude of VHS. Heather was number two. Because we just didn't like.
Like I might get comments for this, but my joke is always like, when we met, this
wish.
is no longer true, but I'm like, I wish you'd like slut it up a little bit.
Yeah. When I was on the other end of the spectrum for sure. And yeah, so bottom line is we went out, he got really fucked up. He was being controlling. He was being aggressive. He was being violent. Then he was driving my dad's car. And I looked at him in the rearview mirror. We met eyes. And I literally, all the love for him poured out. And that was it. It was like I saw the filing cabinets of our life and they all flew out. In that moment, I looked at him and I was like, I fucking hate you. Like I looked at him in the eyes and there was no love left. And I like saw the filing cabinets of all of our experiences, our love, everything, the possible future of our children, like everything flew away. And all I saw was who he really was. And I stopped making excuses. And that was it. And that was in July. And then we didn't spend most of the summer together. He went back to the East Coast. I was in LA building my life. I got into UCLA, moved in with my friends. By the time I met you in October, it had been 3-4 months. I was living in a very solo life and I wasn't in love with him anymore.
So you already shifted out of that mode.
It was done. It was just like he lived in my house, but I wasn't even living there anymore. I got a different cell phone number because at UCLA, my old phone didn't really work. I didn't even give him the new number. So like it just, I was like, I need to get away. I don't know how. And then I broke up with him and it was a horrible breakup where he was like not even a human being anymore. Like he was shaking and was like withdrawing and hadn't eaten in days and just like didn't know what to do with himself. And I was just like, I'm not in love with you anymore. Like I said enough is enough a million times. And like now I mean it. And it was so hard to look at him that way, but it was also like I chose myself finally. Finally, I chose myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I paid every dollar was for him. I paid for everything. I filled out every application. He got into college because I filled it out. Like it was just, he was like a child.
That's funny. I just had an insight. I wonder if we talked about this a little bit in therapy and we haven't really talked about it much here, but I wonder if when it switched and you started making more money than me, if it triggers some of the things,
just like not being appreciated. Yeah. It's like scary. Yeah. But yeah, so that's like the long and short of our relationship in terms of trauma and like what I had been through for 5 years. And then I met you. And what I saw was a handsome, respectful, kind, adult man.
Little did you know.
Not a little boy. And yeah, what a lot of parents say, like small kids, small problems, big kids, big problems. Like, great, I'm meeting a man. He has big problems. Yeah. You had big problems. You were an ex-drug addict. You had been to jail. You had 30 some partners. You had a sex addiction we didn't know about yet. Like the amount of big problems we went through.
Yeah.
But also, like, I still would choose that 100 times over than being abused and, scared all the time.
Yeah.
And my like, true spirit be taken away. And what I loved is that you brought out a side of me. Like we met each other for perfect healing, I feel like. And Marianne Williamson says this all the time, that the people in your life that are closest to you are the ones that are meant for the ultimate learning opportunity. And I learned so much about myself with my ex, and you were the exact opposite kind of person. You want me to be sexual. You want me to be awake and alive. You want me to be my best self. You want us to have amazing experiences that help us both grow as individuals. And that was like really inviting and like delicious to me. And even though it seemed so far away from my reality, I knew I deserved it.
Yeah. And it'll kind of link up with where we went and where we ended up. But I think that's a really good synopsis of like our history.
Yeah.
Because some of the things we're going to talk about, like, I feel like if we go out, if that context doesn't exist, then what we're going to talk about in terms of our experimentation and our ways to try to become more connected and more sexually intimate and all that stuff, seemed like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah. It's been
when you then understand where we come from, it's like, that version of our relationship wouldn't have lasted.
Right.
It just wouldn't have, because you were shut down and I kept looking for what you couldn't give me with other people. And that would have fucked us up.
Exactly. And what I remember is from the very, very beginning, one of our first conversations about relationships was that you said, and I rejected it. You said a relationship can be whatever you want it to be. We get to write the rules. We get to decide what that looks like, if it's open, if it's closed, if we allow this, if we don't allow that.
I said that early on?
At the very beginning. Wow. Yeah, there were so many potential red flags. No, there were so many like...
potential green flags, white flags.
Like that first lie, like, damn, if I would have just been like, okay, he's a person who lies right away. No. Thank you. Thank you for the experiences.
No. I mean, it's say whatever you feel like saying.
No, but I feel like you were like, it was, you know, when you hear something, but you're not ready to hear it yet. And you hear something, and you intellectually can take it in, but you're not ready. Like I wasn't developmentally ready to receive that information. Like it blew my mind.
But sure, especially if you came from that kind of relationship.
Yeah. I'm like, what do you mean? I do what you tell me to do. I try and act strong. You throw me in the closet and lock the door for a while, and then we handle it later.
That literally sounds fucking insane. Like as you say that,
it's insane. And I can't believe that I allowed myself to go through that. I am so sickened whenever I go back there. I'm like, who? That's not me. No. I'm so strong. Like, you know, and it's just like, he just wore me out. He wore it out of me. But yeah, so I feel like with you and I, it was like a consistent, like we were wanting to meet as adult selves and create the rules for like what we ultimately wanted, but we were at such different places in our lives when we met.
Yeah.
And so we did the best we could with what we had.
Yeah.
We started seeing a therapist when we were dating, but I think it was like a year later. Do you remember that therapist in Santa Monica that we saw for a little bit?
Well, that was after the cheating. So
I think it was before.
No. I think the way I remember it is, I cheated on you. We broke up for a year, and then to get back together, you were like, "But we got to see somebody." And I was like, "Hell yeah!"
I guess it was that person.
So that was the person, the woman, right?
Yeah.
I forget her name, but it took. Initially, I don't even think we knew we needed to do work other than like seeing the therapist to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that I realized since, even with the therapist we just saw yesterday, is that we challenge the people we work with because we're not looking to just be okay.
Right.
I guess.
No, we could be okay for the rest of our lives as of right this moment, but that's not where we want to be forever.
Well, I don't think we could be okay because I don't think we're okay just being okay.
No, we're not. We're not.
So we would lose our shit if we were stagnant.
Yeah.
But when we started working with a therapist, the issues of your sexual trauma were not really front and center. Right. We worked with somebody because of my cheating and our communication. Right. That's the way I remember it. And then when more stuff was revealed, it even became more about like my dysfunction and the sexual addiction and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like at some point in the middle of that work, you shifted and you started looking at your own intimacy, trauma, sexual connection. Do you remember when that was or why it happened?
When I started looking at my own intimacy and trauma? Like at what point did I? Yeah.
Like, because part of what we're going to talk about in terms of the experimentation was around, maybe I'll just say it outright. Like,
yeah.
So I was not sober. I was drinking, but that was all I was doing. And then at some point, you know the story much better because I was really resistant when
Can I just say it irks me? Like you weren't sober, but like you were sober from your drug of choice. So you were sober.
I'm still sober from my drug of choice.
You have never touched meth. No, that was your drug. But you've never been an alcoholic. So
I mean, again, right? That depends on who you talk to.
I'm just saying when someone says they're sober, they're still using things. They're still addicted to coffee. They're still addicted to cigarettes. They're still
I make that argument all the time.
Now they're sex addicts. It's just annoying. It's like
I get it. Thank you. Thank you for calling me on that.
Okay, so you
I was not using anything other than alcohol. I was drinking.
Yeah.
And drinking responsibly, and it wasn't causing problems, right?
You were having like tops 2.5 drinks, and that was it every time. And I was like, God, he's so controlled.
Yeah.
I was 20. I'm like, whoa, let's do beer bongs.
I know. It's still kind of that way, right? Like 4 drinks are like we're away at a wedding and we're sleeping there overnight and the kids are taken care of.
Totally.
So you brought up MDMA, ecstasy, Molly, whatever you want to call it. How did that come up?
I had an intuitive knocking at my door. Something within me was like, I had done MDMA in college with my best friends and my ex. It was actually really nice when he was great. Molly. My ex was great. We should call him something. What's his name?
I don't know. You get to make up the name.
I don't know. So he was a great, but it wasn't about him. It was about myself. The experiences I had when I was on it in high school, I think I did it 2 or 3 times with my best girlfriends, and he was there for 1 or 2 of them. They were incredible. And it was so expansive and allowed me to drop all my insecurities and all my fears and all my self-doubt and all the scary stuff that we had built together, he and I. And it was a couple years into our relationship. I think it was like 5 years into it where I brought it up.
It was just literally, it just came up to you. Nobody else brought it up.
So we at that point had been going through therapy. I had my own therapist. Adi and I had our own therapist together. He had his own therapist. He was going through treatment. He was going to meetings. Like we were like in it. We were in the work. Yeah. And I just felt like there was a layer that we weren't penetrating. There was a layer that we weren't hitting. And drinking, it just makes me feel like shit the next day. If I drink too much, I get angry or tired. It's just, I don't remember the things we talk about when I get to drink too much. I like feeling buzzy, but then it kind of like goes the wrong direction and I lose that.
Okay.
And you don't love smoking weed because it makes you paranoid. And I've never really used any other drugs. So what I knew from my experience, I like mushrooms, but mushrooms can go one direction or another. If you take too much, then you can hallucinate. I don't like being out of control in that way.
Yep.
I like the little bit of body buzz. So I went back to my experience on it and I was like, man, the conversations, the friendship, the expansiveness I felt in my heart on that drug was amazing. I wonder if that could help us. It was just an inquiry. I was just like, I wonder. And I brought it to you and you were like, I don't think that's smart given my past. Like I was never addicted to MDMA, but you know, it was tied to that life.
I mean, I used it a lot. Like I used it to the point where I was just tired of it.
Yeah.
And I hadn't at that point.
You had your phase with it.
I mean, I had more than most people's phase with it.
But like you were over it. You were like I'm over it.
Most people when they find ecstasy, I always say, you know, I've sold ecstasy to hundreds, maybe 1,000 people at this point, and I've sold hundreds of thousands of pills. I mean, I might have sold 1 million pills. I don't know, but like hundreds of thousands of pills over my time. And
how long were you a drug dealer? Like 4 years?
5 total.
20
years.
to 25 when you were arrested.
Yeah.
And the SWAT team came in to get you with your broken leg.
That's it.
Okay, go on.
Where they found 7,000 pills in my house. Jesus Christ. And that was like what I kept at home.
Yeah.
That wasn't like the 40,000 in storage.
Jeez.
I did a lot of ecstasy, like a lot of it. And like everybody else, when you first do it, you go, oh my God, I didn't even know that I could feel this way.
Yeah.
Is just the only reaction you have. It's ecstasy.
Yeah.
You go, why did nobody tell me my body could do this?
Mm-hmm.
And then like everybody else, I used it a lot. Like we did it every weekend and sometimes twice a week for months.
Yeah.
And then you get used to it.
Yeah.
And it's just not that exciting anymore because you know what it's going to be. Yeah, I mean,
your tolerance.
You need more, but I had an endless supply. So it wasn't, the problem wasn't that I needed more. I would take 6 pills in a night sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I think I got to 4 or 5 the most. Like my girlfriend at the time would take like 6 and 7.
I would literally drop dead. I would literally drop dead. Yes.
Well, no, it doesn't do anything anymore. Your body just develops its tolerance and you have no more serotonin left. And I'll talk about MDMA here in a second so we can define, so everybody understands what we're talking about. But at some point it would just be over. And so then I got really, really used to it. I would find like these innovative ways to use it so there wouldn't be these crazy trips. So like when you have thousands of pills and these are the pressed pills, like the way most of us think of pills. The Mitsubishis and like all these triangles, all this stuff. The pills develop dust and I would just literally put the dust in cigarettes and I would smoke it. So it'd be like a 15-minute body buzz instead of the whole trip you go through on MDMA. But anyway, my bottom line is I've done a lot of ecstasy.
Yeah.
And in hundreds, again, maybe a couple of thousand
and
people.
And you looped it together with that time of your life too.
Oh, 100%.
You know?
I was using meth the entire time.
Yeah.
The entire time. And so...
Maddie, can you believe this? Maddie's just sitting here observing. Like, can you even believe this human before us was that guy? It's just crazy.
Yeah,
okay, go on.
It's pretty insane. So what I learned, having seen at least 1,000 people probably taking this stuff, is nobody really gets addicted to MDMA. Everybody goes through this phase where they think it's the best thing that's ever happened.
Yeah.
And then it runs out.
Yeah.
And some people never use it again and just they cut it off and they're like, they use it for 6 months, a year, 3 months, 9 months. It would be very different for different people. And some people go crazy during those 3 months and some people would do it once a month.
Yeah.
But then it runs its course and most people go, all right, that was amazing. Learned a lot about myself. Done.
Yeah.
And that was just literally what it would play with everybody. Everybody, the first time they tried it, it was like God just spoke to them. And then gradually, it adjusts the way you see the world.
It's also like a tool just like anything else. So like, you know, if you abuse a tool, if you abuse something like this specifically and you run out of serotonin and your brain is just like, you become depressed and you're depleted and dehydrated and you're not taking care of yourself and you're abusing it. Yeah, I would cut that off too. You know, like there's with anything. So I want to preface that too. It's just like there's different ways to use different substances.
Yeah. Now, the vast majority of people that I knew, especially back then, would then still do it, but do it rarely.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 times a year. Now, I'm going to back up a tiny bit more because MDMA is illegal. It's still illegal. It was illegal in the 90s and early 2000s when I did it, but it wasn't always illegal. Right, it was developed in the 50s by Merck, and which is still a huge pharmaceutical company. And
Merck,
not really clear why.
Bless your soul.
It was just a byproduct of some other chemical sort of process that they had. In the 70s, it started being used by therapists and people doing couples and intimacy work, but underground. It wasn't illegal. So nobody had to really hide it, although I've seen this documentary, which is amazing, and we'll put a link to it. Pharmacopoeia. I forget the name of the documentary, but we'll show a little bit of it. It was essentially like one main guy that was supplying everybody with the MDMA for this therapy and had like an underground lab in a bunker. It was kind of insane. But in the 70s, it was being used in those contexts. And then in the mid 80s, it became illegal. And since then has been disallowed. And, you know, there's a research group called MAPS that is the Multidisciplinary Addiction. I have to look up I forget their acronym, but MAPS is doing studies in a bunch of different pharmaceuticals or natural kind of pharmaceuticals and natural plant medicines and pharmaceuticals. So mushrooms and or psilocybin and MDMA are two of their big ones around trauma and things of that nature. So there's a big body of literature and a lot of anecdotal evidence about the use of this stuff. That's not why I started using ecstasy. I started using ecstasy in the kind of the rave world, and you used it recreationally in your context. But something about where we were in our relationship made you bring it up, and I was really resistant. Like you had to
bring
fight
it up in therapy,
multiple times for me to kind of.
I had an intuition about it.
Allow it back.
100%.
And then eventually I was like, okay, but there were a lot of rules for me, right? Because as there are in my life now in general. And so, do you want to walk us through? Because I feel like for you, this was a real therapeutic thing. For me, I'd done it so much that to me it was like bringing back something. For you, there was something different about it in our relationship, and I'd love for you to explain it.
I wanted to use it as a tool, not as a way to escape, but instead as a way to enhance. I wanted to go deeper with you. MDMA for me, ecstasy, whatever you want to call it, Molly, is something that is a spiritual experience if we let it be. There is a way to abuse drugs, of course, and like go to raves and just forget your life. And I'm not judging anyone that does that. I'm not using any substance in my life ever again. And I never really have, but at this point in our life, for anything other than that with intention. And a way to celebrate where we are. Like when I have a glass of wine, it's not to escape, it's to celebrate and let go and connect to who I'm with. Like you'll never catch me drinking by myself. That's just my personal choice. I don't do that. I won't smoke by myself. I won't drink by myself. My point is to connect. And MDMA, ecstasy helps me connect. It takes several layers off my inhibitions, my being, all the things we build up day after day, like our jobs, our stress, our children, our responsibilities, our insecurities, our PTSD, our past traumas. All of that builds up like calluses surrounding our body as we keep living life. So if you don't have a way to like work on those calluses, there are lots of different ways to do that. We're in trouble. And the way our lifestyle is, we're not going away for 2 weeks to Costa Rica to do ayahuasca. That might have been a good choice then. But guess what? We have children. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And again, just like sometimes with hallucinogens, to me personally, ayahuasca doesn't sound that enticing. It doesn't feel like the kind of healing that I need. I have friends who rave about it and have helped them get through some of the hardest traumas of their life. For me personally, at this point in my life, and then I want to heal sexual trauma. I want to find my sexual energy again. I wanted to, and still do want to, strip away the things that my ex has put on me. And also, after the trauma of the cheating and the betrayal with you, I needed a way to really go there deeply. And talk therapy is great. But, you know, like my sister went through talk therapy for 25 years. Now her therapy is her gardening. She's in the earth. That is her healing now. That is her therapy until it's not. And then she'll find the next thing. I know people who microdose mushrooms, and that is their way of healing from PTSD or trauma.
Yeah. So I don't want to, yes, there are a lot of ways for this. I want to talk about your experience.
Yeah.
So you pushed for this thing. You didn't do it while I said no. So it was like, it was an idea. Honestly, like I said, an intuitive knocking. It was something within me that knew this thing will help us get through some of the trouble we're having communicating and finding each other. Because we were so far in our heads. We were so intensely trying to be right and wrong and like, okay, tell me how many times you saw this or did this with a woman. And wait, I thought you said it was 17 women you kissed. It's really 19. Like it was so cerebral, and that's okay. We needed to talk it out. We're cerebral human beings. But there's a feeling, there's a heart-centeredness that we both were missing. And I think it has a lot to do with our different upbringings and like the way that I like had more affection in my life and craved more affection than you ever had. So we finally felt safe enough to do it together. And we talked to our therapist about it, and she was on board, and you felt safe, and we had boundaries surrounding it and what that was going to look like. And we did it for our first time, and it was great. The first time was still with other people, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, with some of our best friends.
Yeah.
Some were married, like one of our best couple friends was there, and then a couple of her friends were there. That was our first time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we went out and we hung out with people, and we took a very small amount, and then we went back to her house and we all hung out and talked and had the best conversations. And we didn't necessarily do a lot, but we did just enough. And you and I had like the most heartfelt. I remember us sitting to like eye to eye, 1 inch from each other's faces, and talking for a solid hour and a half, heart to heart, eyes to eyes, looking in each other's souls. And I remembered every word from that conversation. And we went so deep into levels that we hadn't gone into with therapy. And the therapy was great for what it did. This was a different level, and it went into different layers of my body and of your body. And we were able to really connect. And it was so beautiful. And since then, you know.
So hold on, I don't want to speed up so much.
Yeah.
Because again, like for us, this is now a 4-year, 5-year like experiment or whatever.
Yeah.
But some people think this is insane. Some people are listening right now going, oh my God, but what was it like? I don't want to jump too quickly to what it then created. But I'm remembering in that first time, for you, it wasn't sexual at all. It was like an intimate connection. I think I definitely felt the connection. I also remember feeling this draw to being physical, but both with you and other people. But we didn't act on any of that. Like we literally just talked and we connected really, really deeply.
Yeah. And I remember while we were on it, one of her friends, one of our best friends' said something about me and like, remember, like she said something like, she's so hot, like she's so beautiful. Oh my God. And then that was like the first, we hadn't really talked like that, I don't think.
I mean, we'd never talked like that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think we'd barely ever talked like that with just between us. Like,
yeah, I think it happened more than it did with my ex, but yes, it wasn't often. There were a lot of blockages, and because
what do you mean happened more than with your
like
ex?
The way that we talked about our sexuality with and like around other people was still way more than I did with my ex. Like,
got it.
It was completely shut down with him. At least with you, it was like a little bit.
Yeah.
But because of the cheating and all the bullshit that we had gone through, that created these blockages within us, so we couldn't even communicate the way we wanted to. We couldn't say if the other person, like there was just so much that we read into everything, and it made it so much harder. So this dropped all of that. In that moment, we were just us.
Yeah.
There was no cheating. There was no betrayal. There was no holding back about anything. It was just who we really were, the essence of who we really were. And we were around other people, and we had our own healing, and we got to connect with, have great conversations with people. And it opened up the door. I felt like it opened up the door. Like it was like, okay, this is what I've been aching for, is a heart-to-heart connection. And we still had sex later that night. Like it was an amazing sexual experience, but it wasn't about that. And it's never been about the sex for me when I'm on that. I love to feel good and be touched, but I don't want to have sex necessarily. At some point in the night I may, but it's not about that. It's much more about, and like just for anyone that's listening that's maybe never done it before, it's not like it's the type of drug that makes you want to like have sex all night. It's much more sensual.
I don't know that there is a type of drug that makes you want to have
but
sex.
But I feel like that might be like a street.
A little bit.
It might be like a street, like maybe people think that, like raves and like I know a lot of like heteros like or homosexual friends that have used it and like then go out to gay clubs and like have a lot of sex, but that's not because of the drug necessarily. And everyone's different with the way we respond. But I just want you to know it's not like a hypersexual feeling where you just want to have sex with everyone and bang everyone. It's much more like you want to like caress and touch and be intimate and close and have great conversations and hug and have a cuddle puddle. Like it's much more that vibe to me in my experience.
So even for you, because you are a really affectionate person, but for you, it brings an additional layer of affection. Because I think, and it's hard for me honestly to parse out what things were like in our relationship before all the cheating and all the insanity.
We were pretty obsessed with each other.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I remember
we touched all the time, and
my friend Boris, remember like one time it was literally in the middle of dinner. I think it was like, stop it guys. Like it was one of those. So it wasn't, I don't think that we had that problem early on.
Yeah. It was
but
the cheating.
The trauma just destroyed it.
It did.
So, and the reason I say that, because it came up even in therapy yesterday, like he's not an affectionate person. I go, I don't think that's true.
You were that way with me for a hot second. Before all the things went down.
Probably like a hot 6 to 7, 8, 9,
like
10
my
months.
Roommates in college would be like, you guys.
Keep your hands off each other.
Yeah, like stop.
We're in fucking public.
Enough.
Yeah. So, and the reason I say that again is it's so easy. A lot of people find themselves where they are right now and they think that's the way it's always been.
There's different sides to ourselves.
Yeah.
And what I really love about it is that the drug, everyone is on the same wavelength. So everyone feels like a little kid. Everyone is pure. Everything is love. Nothing else exists. It's just love. So it evens the playing field. It makes it really, really comfortable to like have because everyone's on the same page. It's not like you're having one experience over there and like the wall is bleeding like on mushrooms. Acid. It's not like confusing or one person's like over in a K-hole. Like there are a lot of drugs out there that can take you in a lot of different directions. Even alcohol. The way you may affect you is you may get angry and violent, whereas for me, I might get sloppy and happy and dancing on tables. Like we all, our brain can, but it's pretty straightforward with MDMA. Like as long as you do a small amount.
By the way, to be clear, I don't get angry and violent.
No, you don't. He doesn't get angry and violent at all. It was just an example.
But I want to say, because so this kind of gave people an idea of how it started, and we'll go farther. But I just want you to know that what Sophie's talking about in terms of the effect is not only Sophie's experience, because a lot of people think about it, well, whatever, it's like a party drug. Sure, it makes you love everybody or whatever. But there's research. So in the 70s, when it was used with couples, there was anecdotal evidence that it would really help couples break through really tough situations in ways that they just couldn't without it. And MDMA facilitated psychotherapy meant you would take a dose and then you would do therapy. And you would do the therapy while under the influence with the therapist there. That's kind of
so amazing.
Idea. So
I wonder if they have video of this.
I'm sure now they have videos and other than MAPS. So MAPS is, like I said, it's this organization, we'll have a link to them, that is currently engaged in recruiting for a phase 3 trial. So everybody understands phase 1 is safety, making sure that people don't die or have severe side effects from the medication you want to give them. Normally, that'll happen even in animals. That doesn't even happen in people. But then phase 2 is safety with people. Phase 3 is the actual efficacy. Like, does it do the thing you say it's going to do? So before any drug can be experimented with on people to see if it will help with pain or depression or anxiety, first, there are studies to make sure it doesn't kill animals or cause some severe dysfunction. Then there are the same kind of studies with people once they've figured out that there's at least safety in animals. And then phase 3. MAPS is currently in phase 3 trials. And it was a battle, like a 20-year battle to try to get the FDA to even approve these studies because for years it just rejected them. No pharmaceutical companies are funding this, which is why it's not happening. And why are they not funding it? Because the patent ran out. So just as a little, I always want to give a little bit of like the rational explanation for why we're experiencing what we're experiencing, because everybody thinks, well, this drug is illegal. There's got to be a reason why it's illegal. Why
if it's illegal, that means it's bad.
Why are you guys doing it?
Yeah.
And I just want to be clear that that's just not the way pharmaceuticals progress. So,
or our society.
So morphine used to be in these tinctures and people would be able to take it in over-the-counter medications. People got addicted to it. They found heroin, which was a purified version that actually enters the brain more easily and is like 7 to 10 times more effective than morphine. They thought that was a fix for morphine. People got really addicted to heroin dens, all that kind of stuff, opium dens, blah, blah, blah. Cocaine came in as one of the ways to address
pain.
To address heroin addiction. Like Sigmund Freud was a huge supporter of cocaine to help with heroin addiction. So pharmaceuticals always progress like this. They get discovered, people experiment with them for something or other. Around MDMA, the utility wasn't really clear. Like what it actually did was not really, really clear until people started experiencing it. But then drugs become illegal because they are perceived as risky, or they get perceived as a criminal threat, things of that nature. So like a lot of these drugs became illegal because
or there's no money.
They went underground and there was money there and people wanted to shut it down. But yes, you just said it. Oftentimes they get replaced by pharmaceutical replacements of that same thing, right? So heroin went away, but OxyContin was totally fine.
Right.
Even though it's more addictive than heroin. Like all these, the game that people keep playing, it's like a little game of whack-a-mole. Prozac was a life-changing drug supposedly for depression. You saw ads for it all the time. You don't see ads for Prozac anymore. Why? Because it's generic now. So no pharmaceutical company is going to invest millions and millions of dollars promoting a drug that is now generic and any company can go manufacture. Okay? So every time you see an ad for a new drug, it's because there's a new patent for that drug. And that drug is under patent and they've got 7 years or so to make the most money they can make off that drug. MDMA is generic. Anybody, if it were legal, anybody who could manufacture it could make MDMA. Nobody has a patent. Nobody has a
control over it.
Control over the manufacture of MDMA. So no companies are willing to put anything into it. Now, the studies, I think when I was reading in MAPS, up to now, it's required almost $3 million to conduct the studies that they've done. Well, they're a nonprofit and they've had donors give the money to do these studies.
Yeah.
So that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's not easy to recruit $3 million to study a drug that is illegal and that goes through all these hoops. So that's the reason why nobody's pushing MDMA. Nobody cares about it. These guys care about it because it can create a change. And I just wanted to give our listeners, and we'll have a link to some of these things, the kind of change we're talking about. So MDMA is currently being studied. Psilocybin is, by the way, also for trauma. As a lot of people know, ketamine is currently approved for depression. And these are all drugs that were 100% illegal and were not used in any therapeutic settings. Again, so ketamine was still used as anesthetic and in surgeries and things like that. But MDMA is currently under study. And there was a study, there are a bunch of these. You can go to the MAPS website and we'll have a few links for you. But there are studies that have shown incredible change. So like in phase 2 clinical trials, as they were doing the assessments while they were assessing the safety, and they showed that MDMA can reduce fear and defensiveness. enhance communication and introspection, and increase empathy and compassion, which would enhance the therapeutic process for people that are suffering from PTSD. What you went through in your relationship with your ex is PTSD, right?
Yep.
It was trauma that then developed into PTSD.
And then what I experienced with you was trauma and PTSD on top of the trauma and PTSD.
Yeah. So if you have PTSD, you're afraid of being re-traumatized and you become defensive to protect yourself. MDMA reduces that. If you have the relationship you had with your partner, or even early in our relationship, and communication is tough, you get closed up. You don't talk about things you're supposed to talk about. You stop thinking about it. You're really good at this. You compartmentalize the thing you could even think about. MDMA enhances communication and introspection. So you're able to start thinking about and process things that you wouldn't allow yourself to think about not on MDMA. All these things can help people who struggle with PTSD. And I just want to share with you guys the results from this one study. There are a lot of them. This is a study from Israel. Maybe that's why I picked it. So they had 3 arms. Before treatment, and then with therapy alone, or with MDMA enhanced therapy. MDMA enhanced therapy was only done twice. So they literally only used MDMA twice in this study. It was, I want to say it was a couple of months of therapy. So they had weekly sessions, but in only 2 sessions was MDMA used. And when it was used, they did an 8-hour session while under the influence of MDMA. There was about a month between each MDMA session, and then there were weekly sessions in between to process. Every single participant in the study had PTSD, met criteria for PTSD before the study started. With therapy alone, there was a reduction of almost 25% in how many people experienced PTSD.
So talk therapy
alone, weekly.
PTSD reduced 20.
A quarter of the people didn't meet criteria for PTSD.
Great.
After a couple of months.
Great.
With MDMA, only 23% of people met criteria for PTSD at the conclusion of the study, not while under MDMA. At the conclusion of the study, 78% of people no longer met criteria for PTSD.
Insane.
By the introduction of 2 sessions with MDMA.
2 sessions with MDMA over 5 weeks.
Yeah.
With talk therapy.
Yeah. So now they're going to engage in phase 3 trials, but we weren't conducting a study, but I just want to say to everybody,
still am,
that the effect Sophie's describing in terms of our ability to connect and her ability to overcome thoughts about the trauma and etc. are totally supported by what researchers are finding with MDMA as well. And so we've continued using it. We use it somewhere between 4 to 6 months times a year.
Yeah.
Something like that.
To say a seasonal,
Yeah. And I think, would you agree that I'm probably the one that has us using it less frequently than you would?
Oh yeah. I don't because I wouldn't do any other substance in the entire world. I would just do Molly. That's it. I would just do it maybe, 6 to 8 times a year, and that'd be it. That'd be my way to let go. I wouldn't touch alcohol. I wouldn't do anything. I would just do that and look forward to it.
You wouldn't do it more?
I don't think so. Just because the thing about it, which is really cool, because it keeps you, clean and keeps you on at least for me, it does become less exciting.
Yeah.
If you do it too often. Yeah. So I think if I did it once a month, I wouldn't really get the same effects from it.
Got it.
So right now I can do a very teeny tiny amount, we're talking from, I don't know what milligrams are, but a quarter of a pill is what I can do. And I feel great.
Yeah.
And it's almost like microdosing. And I think that I always go into it with an intention. I always journal beforehand of what I want to clear, what I want to work on, what conversations I want to have. And if I start to get kind of lost in that intention and just which is fine, it's fine to just dance and have a good time. That's great too. Sometimes I just want to let go. I just want to let go and then celebrate my life. That's great if that's your intention. Usually I have something I want to work through. So I have some dance time, I have some free time, I have some laughing being a kid. But then also okay, now I'm going to go back to my journal and I'll read it. I'll read it to you and I'll say, this is what I've wanted to talk about with you for a while. It's been really tricky. Can we talk about it? And then we sit together and we have a beautiful, safe conversation. And it's hot and it's beautiful and it's a dream. And then I remember it, which is the best part, is that I remember it for weeks to come and we hold on to that magic.
I need to take a break for a second. I have to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
Okay, so it had these effects that allowed us to connect, and we've been doing it since. And again, the effects that you're experiencing are the same ones supported by research. But there's another element,
another layer,
which is why we're having this conversation in this, and that is around intimacy and sexuality in our relationship. Mm-hmm. And so definitely from my standpoint, seeing you do open up physically in a way that wasn't there before.
It's like my sensual body awakened the first time we did it. And I was allowed to be sensual. I was allowed to be sexual. Like, it was like the universe gave me permission, and I gave myself finally permission. And so I remember really early on, we went with a bunch of friends over 4th of July, like 30 friends. And we rented this big house in wine country, and we did it. And I just remember dancing with like basically nothing on. Like, it was like a little skirt and like a little, maybe no top. It might've been topless and just a little tiny skirt. And there were like 30, 40, 50 people there. And I felt 100% beautiful, confident. And don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm ugly. I think I'm very beautiful.
Yeah, you are 100% beautiful.
I don't think of myself as sexual, and I would never use the adjective I feel sexy until like the last few years, where like I'm just even able to use the adjective to describe anything relating to me.
Okay.
And so that first, that was one of the first times where it opened up the door. I remember we had sex like at that party.
On like a balcony
in a gazebo.
Yeah.
Like no one could see us. It was pitch black up there. But we were having sex, and people were in the pool, outside. In the hot tub.
Like we were having sex outside.
We were having sex outside in a gazebo, and there were people in the pool partying. They were jumping in and out. Most people were naked, in and out of the hot tub. And we were like, holy fucking shit. Like, we're having sex, and they're over there. This is hot. And then we got into the hot tub, and like, it just is like nothing happened with anyone else, but it was really, actually, that's not true. I think we both kissed the two people that kind of invited us there.
I don't remember that, but maybe.
Yeah. But it didn't even feel like anything. Honestly, it did feel platonic, which is so funny saying out loud. It's like, but like, I didn't want to go home with him.
Right.
I just kissed him, and it was fine. We felt good about it. Yeah. Do what feels good. And I remember watching you kiss her and thinking, that feels good to me, to watch him experience pleasure. Watching him kiss her right now feels safe. I don't feel triggered at all. And oh my God, what is that feeling I have? Oh, it's love. It's like I am enjoying watching him experience pleasure because I love him so much that feels good in my body. And that was that was like the biggest mind-blowing moment that someone I love could do something with another woman and I not only not jealous, but happy for you. And like watching you and being like, what is life? And being like, that felt good. And then in return, you being like, of course you can kiss him. And my mind blowing again and being like, I'm safe enough to kiss this person right now, to experience pleasure with someone else right in front of you. Like my ex would have he would have slit up both our necks. Like that would never have happened. And so again, challenging growth edges and also just showing up for each other in the moment for what we both want and supporting each other through that.
Yeah.
And it being a journey. Like we don't go into it with a destination in mind. We go into it with an intention of what we want to feel like. But I think that the experience of those nights or days is a journey. We don't know necessarily what we're going to come out feeling like, but we do know, kind of like you may not want to go work out, but afterwards, depending on no matter what the workout is, you're going to feel better. You're going to feel better. You don't know what workout you're doing exactly. You don't know how you're going to get to the final destination, but you know that if you do work out and get yourself to the gym, you're going to feel better. I know after an experience like those nights with you and some of our best friends, I know that I will feel more connected to my truest, most authentic self, my most genuine self, stripped away from anything that society or my life or my traumas have put upon me. And I know that you and I will walk away closer and more intimate.
Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely progressed that way, although as we'll talk about here in a minute, and we're going to go long today, guys. So stick with us through this. But as we discover these parts, it opens up conversations that we never had before, we never knew we were going to have before, etc. So you mentioned other people, and that obviously becomes part of the conversation for us. And we were talking about what title to give it and whatever, all this kind of stuff. But first of all, it's progressed and it's evolved and it's changed throughout time.
I expect it to continue to evolve and progress throughout time.
And
which is why it's not good to put a label on things. Because given your TED Talk, I don't know that, like, who I am now is not who I'll be in 10 years, and who we will be and who we want to be and who we want to show up as is going to change.
Sure. But even what I'm hearing as you're recalling kind of some of the early experiences from the beginning, other people were like, whoever was there was connected. Like even that first time, the woman who said that you're really attractive. I don't know that you would have felt safe to accept that, or how would we have known how to even address that if that wasn't kind of going on. The second time that you're talking about at this big party, obviously in your past relationships, nothing like that would have happened. But honestly, to be perfectly honest, like even in my past relationships, I was a serial monogamous. Like I was always with a different woman, but it just kept like changing. And I think that's what made us feel safer in exploring that together, is neither one of us really had much experience with it, right? Because it wasn't behind the other person's back. It was right there in the room.
Yeah, we definitely want to be clear that as I look through definitions of what monogamish is, or what an open relationship is, or poly, or all these other definitions, we don't fit into those boxes.
Yeah.
Because the thread between all of those is that there's some separateness going on. So if you're an open relationship or a poly, or if you're monogamish, the idea is that you're straying from the coupleship to do your own thing, to have your own private experience. I have zero desire for me or my partner to stray to I don't even have the energy for our relationship. So I don't have the energy to maintain another healthy relationship outside of our own. And I'm not going to have a dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah, I definitely don't have the energy for an unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, definitely not. So I think the difference is, I don't know how to label what we are, but what we do is in a safe container that we co-create, we play and explore.
And so there are definitions for us. And again, like it took us a little while to figure out that we had to come up with rules, and then we came up with rules. But
we all need rules to feel safe.
There are kind of three basic rules for what we do. And again, those developed because we had these experiences. Like we used to go on these staycations, and typically it would be in a hotel or in a house rented somewhere with friends.
Local, yeah.
Like Palm Springs or Temecula, like there's some of these places nearby, or sometimes it would be closer. But get a room,
bunch of friends,
and get a bunch of friends and like party together. Not be physical with the vast majority of them, but sometimes there would be one or two of those people that we become physical with. But the rules were always the other person has to be in the room. We have to ask for permission, which gets a little weird sometimes when you're intoxicated, by the way. So I have to be clear on that. And then the third one is both people have to be into it, which means that the moment one of us decides, hey, I'm not interested in this anymore, we get to cut it off in the moment. And it doesn't matter. And that last rule kind of actually came out of a really bad experience.
Yeah. And again, we're taking big risks here. So things can go wrong.
Yeah.
And when those things go wrong, we learn from it.
Yeah. So for a long time, it stayed in kind of what you described initially, which was lightly playful.
Kissing.
Party, like.
Being free.
Yeah. Another thing that I want to expose, by the way, that is relevant here, because you talked about it in the beginning, you found yourself attracted to women in this context.
I think what I've learned over time is that I felt safer with women because I was so abused and hurt and humiliated by both you and my ex. So men just felt scary, whereas women feel safe and warm. And, if we're close and connected, then it takes off that like fear factor. And hot women are hot, bottom line.
Yeah. But no, that makes sense. I mean,
but I think women to me felt safer.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that's something that wasn't really there before and then kind of entered your world.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is we've talked about it on the podcast. So this isn't new, but you found yourself having feelings for
one person.
A particular woman. And so that was something that got opened up because of this. Because if we weren't experimenting in these ways, that wouldn't have even become a thing.
She and I were close friends, and she was going through some stuff. She was going through a divorce in her life, and we were hanging out a lot. And even when we were hanging out and just, sober, we like do yoga together or something, and she would always make comments about my body. She is an overly sexual person in comparison to me. It's all relative.
Overtly sexual, maybe not overly.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just kidding. It's all relative. And, it was always like with comments and touching my body and giving me adjustments and stuff like that. And through time, we developed a close friendship, but I was definitely attracted to her vibe. Like her energy turned me on. And that lasted for several years. And then we started a party together, and we would all take Molly, and we had a couple really magical experiences over the last few years. It didn't happen often. Handful of times a year we would do this. And when she couldn't come hang, I'd get really bummed and really disappointed because she was the one I wanted to be with. And that way I felt really safe with her and turned on. And then finally there was an ending recently. We had an amazing sexual experience on a trip, and it ended, unfortunately, based on several factors that actually have nothing to do with this. I mean, I'm sure it's all connected, but it wasn't really directly about this. It was more about the way she was treating people in my life. And
it just didn't fit into the rest of your life, which I think is, again, what's interesting about this, right, is what we're talking about is experimenting in one particular area of life that bleeds over into other areas of life sometimes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always all fit.
Yeah.
So the incident that happened that made the third rule exist was because you pushed the envelope again, and you set up an experience that you thought would be amazing.
Yep.
And it was about somebody that I was attracted to, that we met at like one of these.
We went to an event, and at the event
that I spoke at,
that Adi spoke at, I noticed that he kept like talking to this one woman in particular, and they kept kind of gravitating towards each other. And I'd be like, where did he go? And then he'd be like talking to this woman. So I was like, oh, he's into her. And I'd like joked about it. They exchanged, like at the end, I was like, go get her number. Like, you were into her, like go get her number. And like, it was playful. It was like as a friendship. It wasn't meant, it wasn't
risky.
It wasn't risky. And you got her number, you guys, whatever. We like started to text, the three of us. And
because one of our rules pretty much, and it's funny, there's probably a handful of our friends now that I do text with without you being included in it because they're so far on the safe list, nobody cares about it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't text with women unless you're part of the equation.
Yeah.
And that's just one of those things that we kind of created years ago.
It's something that we created based on the past cheating and all the hiding and betrayal that made me feel safe. Was, okay, you can have friends that are girls, but it's going to be, I'm included in that. Yeah. So we still hold on to that as of now. I don't actually know that would be necessary for me these days, but it's just something that we pretty much do.
That's the whole point of these, is now it's just part of what we do.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's like
it's also Rochelle in a marriage.
And Katie.
Yeah.
Like when I text with Rochelle and Katie, I sometimes text without you in it, but they're like 12-year-long friends.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
So you set this, you found that.
So I set up an evening for us all. She came over, and I had the intention, I had already talked to one of my best friends about it, and I was like, I think that I want to sleep with her. Like, I think I want to have a threesome, because we've never had a threesome before. And Adi's really into her. Like, it'll be so hot. Like, he'll be so into, his mind will fucking blow. And like, I want to gift him this. The problem was that I wasn't into her in the same way.
That was at least one of the problems.
There were many, but one of the problems is that it was like, here, I'm going to gift you this thing, but it's like a big thing about us. I'm not watching you two like do something and I'm not a part of it. Like, we were all supposed to have this chemistry, and like, I felt insecure surrounding it.
And you never told me.
I didn't tell you.
You didn't tell me that you were setting this up in your head.
No. So then we all went out, and then
for me, it felt like a natural progression.
Yeah. And for me, I was like, I'm plotting. And
Sophie plots, by the way, for those of you who don't know her.
Oh yeah. I love a good like thing to look forward to. An adventure. I love adventure, as long as like I get to plan it. So we went out, we went to a speakeasy in LA, and we all had some Molly, and then we all hooked up.
Came up, yep.
Yeah.
And
there were moments of like, this is hot, this is fun, but part of, the problem with not talking about it with my partner beforehand was that in an attempt to surprise you and give you an amazing experience, it was something so far outside of my comfort zone that like you probably would have been like, are you sure we should sleep with her? We haven't even like, whatever, you know, like it probably would have.
We literally haven't even hung out.
Yeah, we've never even hung out.
Never hung out.
We had never hung out.
So you didn't say anything. You were right. It was an amazing night. It was all this great stuff, right? The morning shows up and you were off.
Yeah.
And I had like literally until.
I got sick that night.
You got sick.
And asked her to leave.
But sometimes you get sick when you take up like too much.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was literally just that. And the next morning
I spiraled.
You reacted. And
I freaked out. I went into fear. I was like, she's going to ruin our lives. She's going to tear us down. She's going to tell everyone about it. Meanwhile, here we are telling everyone about it. We clearly have no shame. But at the time, I was like, she's going to ruin our careers. What if she's pregnant?
Yeah, you went pretty far down.
I went so far down.
What if you leave? Like, you're going to leave me for her? I was like,
you're going to leave me for her?
Like, what universe are we existing
What about
in?
our family? He's like, none of this has crossed my mind. It was just a hot night.
Yeah.
And I completely, based on all my past experiences, which don't go away. That's just what we said. Like last week, I was like, they don't really go away. They're just
a scar.
It's a scar.
You still have the scar.
It's not something that you think about every day, but like when things get raw and you're vulnerable, the scar comes up. You're like, oh, the scar. So
we don't have to go into all the spiraling, but like it was bad.
It was bad.
It was really bad for a few weeks.
And guess what? When we came out of it, I learned. Instead of saying we are never going to have any experiences that are sexual with another human being for the rest of our lives, which fearful me could have gone there. No, I want to expand and grow in this relationship and as an individual. This modality and this tool has been healing me, my sexuality, my sensuality, our relationship. Why am I going to punish myself by taking away a really fun potential experience to help me grow because of fear?
There were two things. Before that experience, you had the sense that once you cross a line, you can never go back.
Like you can't unsee it. That was like always my fear is if we do something that is out of our integrity or something we regret, I will never unsee it.
Yeah. So you actually planned for the thing, but then it backfired and you didn't like the actual experience.
We took it too far. Too soon, too far.
And even though it took a while to unpack it, you realized that when you came out of it, they're like, oh, we still have, we're still as strong as we were before. But that created our third rule. And the reason the third rule is there is because I told you once, you told me that you actually realized you weren't into it, like in the middle of the night at some point.
Yeah.
I was like, why didn't you stop me? And you're like, well, because we're already in the middle of it. I go, just to be clear, I don't care what's happening. Like, it literally does not matter what the circumstance is and who's doing what to whom. In a moment, you can say, hey, I'm not into this anymore. And it's over.
Yeah.
Like in a split second.
And just as I used my powers to create it, I could have easily ended it and been like, this has been fun.
And by the way, both of us would have been 100% because now we know her and we know her personality. Both of us would have been 100% okay with it.
Yeah.
But even if not, I don't care.
But we had never been in a situation like that before.
Totally. So now we have the third rule because before it's always the two of us and the other person is there and and you have to ask for permission. Those were always the first two rules. We added the third rule after this experience because the moment there's no this is almost this is like the consent conversation that men and women are having or people are having all over the world. Like just because I was into hooking up with you at the beginning of the night, if in the middle of the night you do something that makes me not want to hook up with you, I'm allowed to say no. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, just because we're married, and I think this is also the idea for a lot of people, well, we're married, he's my husband, I should just let him do this thing to me. No.
Absolutely not.
Like literally in the middle of sex, you can say to somebody, you know what, I'm not really into this, I need to stop. And that's okay. And it's also okay in these boundary kind of expanding experiences because what I explained to you the next day is the only reason it was amazing and mind-blowing and hot and all that stuff was because I thought you were into it.
Yeah.
The moment I would have found out you're not into it, it would have ended.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have felt badly for her that it ended. None of that would have entered my mind.
But that's also my codependent,
sure,
people pleasing. Even when it comes to a threesome, that I orchestrated, I feel bad being I don't want to ruin the party. I don't want to ruin the fun. I don't want to be Debbie Downer. And it's what?
And that's part of, I think,
I am protecting our marriage and our relationship and my sanity.
You're saying it. I think, first of all, the marriage and all, but you're protecting your feelings. I think that's enough by itself.
Yeah.
Right? That's enough by itself. You don't have to be protecting our relationship.
That's one of the biggest things about codependency is where your feelings aren't go on the back burner.
Yeah, and that's why I made that point. Like in the discussion, fight, argument, whatever you want to call it, that we've been publicly talking to people about, that we've been having for a little while, like I'm having feelings, you don't understand why those feelings are there. That doesn't make them invalid, right?
Sure.
Like you had feelings that night, even though you orchestrated the event, even though you could have stopped, like, but your feelings were valid.
Yeah.
And
they're allowed to shift and change.
And it should have stopped.
Yeah.
Like the moment you had feelings that were not aligned, it should have stopped. By the way, that could have even changed your feelings.
Right.
If you would have recognized in the middle of the night that if you say stop, it stops, that could have ended the spiraling. It could have, like, there were a lot of other things that could have changed. And for me, the important thing, and this is why I wanted to get into the nitty gritty about this around this, like MDMA, Molly stuff, whatever, is, you know, you said it so well earlier, like this is a tool. It doesn't fix the things that are present that you're struggling with.
Well, it's also like we do it 4 times a year. So 361 days in the year, we are not doing this. Yeah. For 4 days in the entire year, maybe 6, we are having real lives and real experiences and using other tools like therapy, like talk therapy,
and
like
and
healers.
The lessons we learn from these experiences. Though.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
So it's a tool, and like,
and we're embodying it. So we're taking the practices from the experience that we learn, the closeness, the things we need to focus on. We're taking those experiences from those couple of days a year, and then we're spreading them like magical fairy dust throughout the year and allowing it to integrate.
Yeah.
Which is the most important part, is taking lessons. You can go to therapy till you're blue in the face, but unless you take action and make change, what's the point? Yeah. You're wasting your dollars. You can have a Molly experience and go deep with someone, but unless you take some notes or remember, like, let's not forget this feeling and that we need to have sex on the floor more. Or let's not forget that, like, I love to pleasure myself in front of you. Let's not forget that, like, once in a while, it's important to wear lingerie. Whatever the thing is, holding on to the magic and letting it sprinkle through your real life the rest of the 361 days or whatever you have.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, my thing about the rules came out of you not wanting to label it. And so our rules might change. Our rules might adjust.
Absolutely.
They probably will over time.
Yeah.
But instead of giving it a name, what we do, those are our rules. And it kind of, as long as things adhere to those 3 things, the other person's there, you asked for permission, you didn't do something just assuming that it was okay. And
we're not just like walking around making out with people. I have to say, Adi, are you comfortable if I kiss her? Yeah. Adi, are you comfortable if I kiss him? Are you comfortable if and like we don't ever go away with anyone privately. Like I would definitely not go away with a man or a woman alone because bad things could happen because you're not fully there. You are intoxicated.
Yep.
And your reactions are slower and it feels good to feel good. So if like there's been times when like someone's massaging me and then all of a sudden we're kissing and I'm like, how did that happen? Or like the time our friend Darren, like one of our best friends, we were at his house for Adi's 40th birthday and he like handed me a bunch of sheets and pillows and blankets. And then like we were kissing and I'm like, how did that happen? And like came and told you right away, but it didn't mean anything. I didn't want to kiss. It's just, it feels good.
Yeah. But again, that's why the rules are in place, right?
Exactly.
Is because what might feel good to you in the moment can be really triggering or upsetting to your partner.
Yeah.
And it's just like when you are drunk, you make decisions that are not necessarily the same ones you would make when you're sober, and definitely not the ones that everybody around you wishes you would make, right? That's all.
Absolutely.
I want to have this conversation with the clear understanding that it is an intoxicant. Like you are under the influence. And so
there's no driving. There's no like being around children. There's no like, I mean, I don't ever walk that line. I don't even smoke a teeny bit of weed and be around my kids. Other parents parent differently. Molly is not something you want to be around children. It's not something that you want to drive a car. You don't want to I wouldn't even go out really in public. Like you can go to a club and dance if you want to. Personally, that's not our vibe. We want to be with people that we trust and know. If you listen to our podcast from a few years, our story, we were out at a hotel. I had too much Molly. I also did cocaine that night and I drank a bunch of champagne and I was in a bad, dark place. I got tricked into going into a bathroom and for better or worse, something bad happened. And I slept with someone that I wish I wouldn't have. And We learned from it. We expanded from it. There's a lot of good that came out of it. But if I weren't on that drug, I 100% would not have done that.
Right.
And I was on other drugs too. It was 3 in the morning. Like there were so many factors, but my reaction and response was slower.
Yeah.
And that's just a fact. So be smart, be careful, and know your body, know your limits. And the first time that if you're going to do this, the first time you do it just with your partner at home. Just carve out a magical ceremonial, light the fire, write intentions out together, read each other your journal entries while you're on it, take a very small amount and go from there. You can always have more. Yeah. But it's like if someone's just drinking for the first time, you're not going to give them like a triple shot of tequila soda. You're going to give them a beer, or you're going to give them a watered down something to see how their body responds and reacts.
And just to be clear though, Sophie's saying, if you want to do this, we are not recommending you do this. We're not telling you to do this. This is not at all. We are just sharing our experience with it. And I want to kind of, we're having a long episode, and that's fine. It's great. This is a really good topic and an amazing.
And you've been asking for this for literally years. So here we are. I
want to talk a little bit about when we're not under the influence, the results of this kind of work, because I think that's the thing that matters more than anything else to me. So one of the examples that I think is incredible is when we first started going out and we were trying to bridge the gap. Anytime you got pushed beyond your comfort zone, it would cause real anxiety, like almost like a panic attack and severe reactions for you. And then I think I just, more than anything else, I just kind of felt, I feel bad for you. Secondly,
oh, you're saying like sexually, intimately, because of all the trauma I went through with my ex, before you even cheated, there was this period where I was super traumatized by any new experiences.
You would try to push your boundaries.
I'd be like, oh yeah, let's go do that fun thing. And then I would like cry in the corner the whole time.
Oh, terrible.
Or like we'd go into a sex shop in like West Hollywood.
We went to a sex shop and you lost your shit.
Was triggered by literally every corner.
You just start crying.
Every toy. Hallucinating crying.
Like, what's wrong with you? You're crazy. Like it was a bad experience. And the reason I'm saying that is in contrast to like say now, we went out yesterday to buy clothes for a holiday party, and you tried on some stuff that was not appropriate for the holiday party, but was sexy. And you went, I'm buying this because I want to wear it for let's say like our New Year's party. Yeah. And that version of Sophie didn't exist.
No, I had no freedom.
10 years ago.
I had no freedom within my sexuality. I had no freedom. I was scared to death of being sexy.
Yeah, like the idea of I'm going to buy a lacy, bralette, what do you call those things?
Yeah, like, bralette.
To wear.
As a top.
You would have started crying if I would have suggested that 10 years ago. Totally. And now you went into a place. So the reason I'm saying that is outside of those experiences, you seem like you've gotten more connected to your sexuality. Now there's still stuff left over. You're going to go see somebody for somatic experiencing and some EMDR to try to continue getting rid of some of that scar tissue. But I feel like you've expanded your ability to connect to your sensuality and sexuality, even when you're not on this.
And all of these experiences have helped me. The woman that I was involved with helped me to feel beautiful, sexy, to be in touch with the sensual side that, sometimes unless I was on Molly, I didn't feel. Like throughout the day, telling me things about why she loves me and what makes me beautiful. And, this part, and I was like, oh, this is okay to feel this way. Like, this is okay to talk this way. This is okay to feel these feelings and have butterflies about something in a sexual way. All of these experiences, I don't regret any of them because they all taught me something. The experience in the bathroom over New Year's 4 years ago taught me that you're not a horrible person if you have a one-night stand. It didn't change who I am. I'm not on the shit list now of human beings. There's nothing wrong with it if it's an experience that you learn and grow from. And we expanded far beyond our wildest dreams after that experience. Did we ask for it? No. Did we want that to happen that way? No. Was it really hard in many ways? Yes. But all of these experiences over time help us grow.
Yep.
And part of the magic for me of any of these experiences, you and I have done mushrooms just once or twice together, and we just took a little tiny bit at the beach. And we had such a sweet day. We were crying and laughing about our children, and like the sweetness that we experienced was so beautiful. And also, we have the most amazing conversations every single morning of our life when we put our phones away and go for a walk with our daughter. Also, We just had an amazing 2-hour therapy session yesterday. Also, we do it all, you know? And it's so important to continue challenging ourselves, even like the way we have sex when we're sober and just you and I has evolved and is more open and more loving. And that's also a reflection of the work that we've done. So by all means, this is not like an ad for Molly. However, the point is that it can be used, all of these things can be used as tools, just as a vibrator can be, and just as a CBD lube can be.
Yeah, and maybe the difference is, and again, that's where I go back to the research, right? Is some of us have blocks.
Yeah.
So sure, a vibrator can be used to make yourself feel good, but if you've been told that touching yourself is a terrible sin and that you should rather die than do that, or your boyfriend made you feel like if you need to do that, then what you have to do is have sex with him because that's the only way you're allowed to experience pleasure. Whatever the thing, I don't know anybody's specific experience who's listening right now. The difference, and again, the research, right? Like we'll put links to this stuff. Somebody who's had trauma, especially, can cerebrally understand that they should be able to feel pleasure, but their body is triggered, their mind is triggered. They feel like there's an impasse. They're not able to experience pleasure. Like, you know, when you and I started dating and I would go down on you, it wasn't like you were crying because what I was doing felt terrible. It was because of the connection to intimacy and whatever it brought up in you. A vibrator is not going to fix that.
No.
Me having a conversation with you can make you feel better about the fact that I'm not going to be insane like your ex and like beat you because you're crying.
But your behavior and actions are what?
But I can't make you get past that experience. By the way, maybe with a lot of exposure therapy and a lot of stuff, that's other work and other tools.
Yeah.
So
they're all different tools. There's reasons for all of them. Yeah. There's, you know, if you're scared to try a drug, that's okay. There's other amazing creative things that you can see. A sex therapist. We've had tons of sexual experts on this podcast, like a big handful, large handful of incredible humans. Yeah. Revert back to that, go back and look at our old podcasts and go to them. They're like in our inner circle. We love them so much. There are so many different ways to heal, and we will forever be looking for those modalities. Yep. And we will forever be experimenting with them because our intention is to choose each other over and over again. I talk about this a lot. Like Adi and I have been together 15 years. It's a choice. We have to continuously choose each other. We will get bored. You will get lazy. You will take it for granted, which is why we're back at therapy right now, because we've got a little lazy. We're taking care of all these other couples, all of our people, our tribe. We're not looking inward and taking care of ourselves. We've been neglecting it. So like a dirty corner of like piles of stuff, it's just collected and now it's time to do the work again. And what keeps the passion alive? What helps us keep the spark alive? Is something like this, is all the things that we've described. So from getaways to doing workshops, going on retreats, co-leading retreats with other couples, going to meetings with other couples, double dates with people who elevate us and make us feel challenged, you know, bike rides together, trying recreational drugs like mushrooms or MDMA, new sex toys, you know, challenging ourselves, new date night spots. There are so many things that create intimacy. For us, radical transparency allows us to be more intimate with each other. And as a person who went through great trauma, as a person who was abused for just existing, it isn't always easy to say my thoughts out loud when it's something that is vulnerable. So that's why it's become a practice over time with my partner, is because it's what's freed me from, you know, the shackles of repression.
Yeah.
I was repressed for so long and not allowed to literally walk down the street in a V-neck t-shirt, or I was called a slut for just existing. I was not doing anything wrong. I was not acting slutty. And he called me that over and over again. So that penetrated and created this idea in my head that I couldn't be me.
Yep.
And you helped me to feel free. And you helped me through all our work and all of our traumas and all of our, you know, we have so much karma together to work through. And I think it's several lifetimes. And there's no one else I'd rather do it with. And it's such a fun ride. And I'm so grateful that all of you are along for this and care what we have to say about our relationship and our experiences. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being a part of our story.
And we'll keep updating. You know, Sophie mentioned that it's a work in progress.
Yep.
And we're always looking for ways to get more comfortable. Like, I don't ever want you to feel uncomfortable. I don't ever want to feel uncomfortable myself. Will we ever reach a point where it never is true? I don't know. But we're going to keep looking for more and more tools. I always use this example with my clients, and it's the world's best carpenter, just a magician in carpentry. If they walk into just a pile of wood, can't do anything without tools, without hammers, saws, and then all the different kinds of saws and all the different kinds of hammers and screwdrivers and nail guns and all like a good carpenter has a whole suite, like a truck full of tools. You've seen it.
And he has mastered using them. And that's what we're working towards, is we're adding more things to our toolbox.
Yes.
All the things I just mentioned, they're all in our toolbox, and we will continue to pull them out and put them back and learn from it and say, oop, we went too far in that way. We're going to back it up a little bit. This is actually what feels good to both of us. Because it's not just about me. If you tomorrow decided it's not good for me for these reasons to do this thing, we will back it up and we will take a pause and we will focus on other things. Again,
right? The rules, right? Ask for permission, both people in the place, and then we both have to be into it, are kind of the rules we've come up with now. And that sort of supersedes everything else, because it's all about strengthening the relationship, and we have to make ourselves stronger. And so, like, helping you overcome trauma was the reason I was willing to jump into using something that I'd used before, even though it scared the crap out of me. And we're trying this out. But you guys have always asked, like, what do you do? How do you stay in this place? And there's a lot of work, and Sophie's an incredible person who's really good at transparency and honesty anyway, but also at expanding. And so, Sophie brings such a positive attitude to a lot of these things, where a lot of times in the past I was really cynical and down. So we balance each other out in that way. But
I also just want to say over and over again, it's a choice. It's a choice. Be in the relationship fully or get out.
Yeah.
Be in the relationship fully or get out. If you don't want to do the work and you don't want to play and you don't want to challenge your growth edges, you don't want to add more tools to your toolbox, get out. It's not fair to the relationship. Find someone that you want to do this with, you want to play with, you want to get lost with, you want to be free with.
Unless you guys are perfect. If you guys are in a relationship and it's perfect, then you guys
sure.
It's amazing to do whatever mix of tools ended up working for you.
Just remember that
we're working towards that.
Remember that you only live once.
Yes.
Remember, this is your one potential relationship. This is it. And wake up to yourself to be the best vibrant version of you for you and for your partnership.
Hell yeah. All right, this was like a double episode, a double header to
to end
the decade.
Yes.
A double episode to end the decade.
You're welcome.
And so 2020 is
coming.
It. We're ready for it.
We're here to expand you. You expand us. Please keep us in the loop. Let us know what you're expanding into, what you're letting go of. Tag us on social media. Share what you loved about this episode, what you're letting go of in 2019, and what you're calling in 2020.
And Ignited is going to help you figure out whatever you're calling in, because we are going to throw a January challenge.
Whoop, whoop.
So we're going to do our 21-day challenge. We got some special tricks up our sleeves for this challenge for you. I'm giving you the first 2 weeks of January, because you know how it is, right? We all make decisions. I call them wishes. Other people call them resolutions of what we're going to do. And a lot of us find ourselves struggling and need support. So I think it's the beginning of the third week, or like January 13th is when we're going to start this challenge. We'll have a link down here in the notes for you, but it's 21dayhabitreset.com. Come check us out and let Ignited be part of the thing that guides you to the next. We hope this was really useful. Please screenshot, tag us, let us know what resonated for you, and share it with everybody, because this is the last episode that is going to get us over 1 million. So
Woo-hoo!
Let's make this thing go viral.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy
Mwah.
New Year, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited Podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.